Welcome back once again to the Imaginary Gallery. It's TJ, your host. Touch me. I'm contagious. I was given the shirt as a gift, which actually would be perfect for a narcopath to wear. We're in the Psychopath's bag of tricks, and we are going to discuss buttons, referencing Dr. Hare's book, Without Conscience, The Disturbing World of the Psychopaths Among Us. He begins by telling us, if you have any weak spots in your psychological makeup, a cluster B creature is sure to find and exploit them, leaving you hurt and bewildered. Then he provides some examples that show us the uncanny ability of these creatures to detect our vulnerabilities and to push the right buttons. In an interview, one of their psychopaths, who's a con artist, said candidly,
"When I'm on the job, the first thing I do is size you up. I'll look for an angle, an edge, figure out what you need, and I give it to you. Then it's payback time. With interest, I tighten the screws."
William Bradfield, the psychopathic teacher he described earlier, never stalked attractive women. He could smell insecurity and loneliness the way a pig smells truffles. In a chilling auditorium scene in the movie Cape Fear, the Robert D Hare character, who is a psychopath, mesmerizes and practically seduces a 15-year-old girl by playing upon her awakening sexuality. The callous use of the lonely is a trademark of these creatures. One of their subjects used to seek out depressed, unhappy ladies at singles bars. After he moved in with one of these ladies, he convinced her that she needed a car, and then sold his to her for $1,000. Then he promptly took off before the formal transfer of ownership could be made with the car. Of course, she was too embarrassed to press any kind of charges. She'd look like a fool. Some of these creatures, particularly those in prison, initially contact their victims through the Lonely Hearts Club columns. I'd imagine today there'd be some kind of website. Letters often lead to visits, and inevitably to disillusionment and pain for the victims or for the targets. Several years ago, one of his former students, who loved Siamese cats, put an ad in one of those columns, and she got several replies from the inmates, including a psychopath whom she'd previously interviewed as part of the research they did on psychopathy. The prose in his letter was flowery, full of syrupy descriptions of warm sunsets, long walks in the rain, loving relationships, the beauty and mystery of Siamese cats, and so on, all of which stood in stark contrast to its documented record of violence towards both men and women. It also reminds me of a strange encounter I went through where I met two different creatures, one for a few months and then it disappeared, and then the second. Both of them claimed that line of,
"I like to go for long walks in nature."
You know, with each one of them, not once was it ever suggested that a long walk in nature be done. It's fake. It's intended to put on a certain image, which I'm not quite sure what that image would be. These creatures have no hesitation in making use of people's need to find a purpose in their lives, or in preying on the confused, the helpless, and the frail. One of their subjects carefully studied newspaper obituaries, seeking out elderly people who had just lost their spouse and had no other family members remaining. In one case, one of these creatures posed as a grief counselor. It persuaded a 70-year-old widow to give him the power of attorney over her affairs. The scheme he set up fell apart, though, because an alert church minister became suspicious, checked up on this imposter, and learned that he was a convicted swindler and out on parole.
"She was lonely, and I was attempting to bring some joy into her life,"
said the subject. These creatures recognize and turn to their own advantage the hang-ups and self-doubts that many people have. In his book, Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter, Dr. Lecter, Quid Pro Quo, Thomas Harris described a revealing scene in which Dr. Lecter was a pure sociopath, quickly and skillfully manages to detect and use to his advantage FBI agent Starling's weak spot, her fear of being common. Starling was a novice at dealing with psychopaths, but even those familiar with this disorder have buttons that can be pressed. Pretty much every psychiatrist, nurse, social worker, or psychologist who's worked at any length of time in a mental hospital or prison knows of at least one staff member whose life was turned around and upside down by a psychopathic patient or inmate. In one case, a staff psychologist with a solid professional reputation and non-existent social life ran off with one of her psychopathic patients. 2 weeks later, after cleaning out her bank account and charging the max on her credit cards, he dumped her. Her career ruined, and her dreams of a loving relationship were shattered. She told an interviewer that her life had been empty, and that she simply had succumbed to his blandishments and fake promises. These creatures have an uncanny ability to spot and use nurturant woman, that is, those ladies who feel a powerful need to help or mother others. Many of these are in the helping professions, such as social work, counseling, and they tend to look for the goodness in others while overlooking or minimizing people's faults.
He's got his problems, but I can help him.
Or,
he had such a rough time as a child. All he needs is somebody to hug and love him.
These women will usually take a lot of abuse in their belief that they can help. They are ripe for being left emotionally, physically, and financially drained. One of Hare's favorite anecdotes is about a psychopathic offender who was a nurturance-seeking missile, who had local reputation for attracting a steady stream of female lady visitors. His record of violence against members of both men and women were long, and he was not particularly good-looking or very interesting to talk with. But he had a certain cherubic quality that some ladies, staff included, seemed to find irresistible. One lady commented that she always had an urge to cuddle him. Another said that he needs mothering. I've mentioned in other videos before how it's true that if you do have weak spots, these creatures pick up on it. He's spot on there. A lot of times we may reveal such things without even meaning to, or without even having the slightest idea that this person we're speaking with could possibly ever use what we're telling them against us. But that's a good lesson to learn. Don't tell too much to someone you don't know, no matter what your intentions are, your feelings are at the beginning, because they're very good sometimes, these cluster B creatures, at fooling unsuspecting, trusting people. And I did find that part interesting in Silence of the Lambs, where Dr. Lecter sniffs through the glass wall and he comes up with a lot of guesses about her, judging by her accent, perfume, and so on. I was impressed, though, with her response because it's so unlike the Cluster B. Cluster B would respond to Dr. Lecter's statements as, "Oh, no, that's wrong. Oh, no, I'm not from the country. Oh, no, I don't feel that way." I liked how Starling said, "You see a lot, Dr. Lecter. You see a lot." Which means it's a validation, which is something you don't get with the Cluster B creature. And then when he mentions that these creatures go after the lonely, they look for depressed people or ones that go to the singles bar desperately looking to find that Mr. or Mrs. Right and want to move in real quick, like in the example he gave. I can relate somewhat to this, not because I was lonely or in a singles bar, but actually after the 11-year experience, I was through with the idea of any kind of relationship. I just thought, this is sick. Look at what I'd gone through. I don't think this is meant to be. So I deliberately set out to not do that. Sure, I'd have fun if somebody wanted to have fun or hang out and do something. As far as the lonely part, I had just moved into a home after this mess, and I was focused on getting the home together. It was like a nice distraction, and dating anybody was the last thing on my mind. However, a few suitors came up that were very pushy, even though I'd said I don't want anything like that.
"Oh, that's okay."
Then they'd continue to weasel their way in.
"Oh, let's celebrate this holiday. It's coming up, and oh, I want to see you today and tomorrow and the next day." And
I'd have to say, "No, sorry." But in my situation, I had been living with a creature for all those years. We had our own groups of people we hung around with, but afterwards, I probably looked like a prime target because I didn't have like a group of kids I hung out with every week all the time. I was used to being with that creature. The person thought,
"Ooh, perfect. His schedule's wide open. I'll take over."
I would still make it very clear, but it didn't matter what I said, because in their mind, if you're still seeing them, then they're still successful at their game. So in my case, I was anti-relationship. However, I still came into contact with 2 of these in a row that had very similar characteristics. It seemed almost like a game, like somebody wrote this script and they deliberately copied the same characteristics for both creatures. I can see now how I was probably a very attractive target because I was saying, "I've given up on all that stuff. I'm not interested." Both of it thought that they could twist the situation to make it be where they're going to prove that they're not like the others and they're going to show me this, and like nobody's asking you to show me anything, but they'd still insist on it, which was a turn off. I don't don't really have any experience or knowledge about those in prison with the Lonely Hearts Club thing. But then it talks about how these creatures want to find someone who wants to find a purpose, which I could probably have been translated into that because I'd said, oh, I don't want that ever again, oh, never. So it probably thought,
oh, this person's got no purpose in their life. I'm going to step in and show him that I'm the difference.
Even though it was a complete fraud. And the sick part is these people know it's a fraud, yet they sit there and give their lines about how,
oh, I'm different from everyone else. Oh, I would never do that to you.
Even though they do worse later on. They try to pull you in with honey. They mask over any indication of their disorder that they know of. Sometimes it still shows through, though. As far as hang-ups, I had first-hand experience with those. Luckily, my hang-ups weren't really hang-ups. They were just things I talked about for fun, things I've accepted and just spoke about. But this creature must have thought that I was being like it by pretending, which I wasn't. But some of the things I would mention that I'd laugh about, this person would take inventory of, and then later when a certain triangulation opportunity occurred where it didn't want me to talk to a certain person, it would pick from that list of things that I was laughing about and treat them seriously, like this person really said this about you. And I just laughed at it, and I thought, really? Well, that's funny. I've never heard that before. Because a lot of the things that it translated as hang-ups were simply personal things I laugh about, but they're not things I go around worrying about daily, and it must have thought otherwise, though, and it was wrong. But they do. When you have genuine hang-ups, they will zero in on those. And it's interesting how Dr. Hare says that these creatures are able to spot and use the nurturing, it says women, but it could be men or women. They see someone who looks for the good in people, and they can tell by interacting that the person isn't as jaded at life as they are secretly under the mask. They think that they can step in and pretend to be the exception and think they're going to be successful. I usually see through a lot of their attempts, and I'd sometimes name them. I know what you've just done. That was a technique of whatever it was. And of course, every time...
oh, that's not true. Oh, that's wrong.
Yes, these creatures love to press buttons. It really does something for them. They think that they're playing you like a puppet. And I've spoken to a few candidly, and I've said, well, sure, you can trick somebody and you can fool them into doing these things for you, but it's only going to be temporary. They're going to figure you out. But these creatures don't seem to care. They seem to act as if they think they're going to find that one vulnerable fool that they can trick and scam successfully for the rest of the other person's lives, but it never seems to work out, does it? They just switch their mask and try a different technique. So that brings us back again to the suggestion not to tell too much, even if it feels natural, because I've had that problem where I don't really care, so I'm just thinking I'll just tell anything, even if it's ugly, because I don't want to trick that person and lure it in or make it any more interested, especially if it's calling too much or texting too much. My interest, I would just deliberately say something bad or gross about my situation that a typical person might say, oof. But these are like,
oh, no, that's okay.
Which is a sign for you. If you reveal something really yucky, they'll try to twist it around and make it be something, oh, I'm interested in that. And you'll think, who would be interested in that? Whatever it may be. And I also got the part at the end of the section where these people all say that they just want to cuddle this person and certain parts of its personality it finds attractive. And I know these people practice. They go through plenty of targets, so they've got a lot of experience to draw upon. And of course, if you ask, how many people have you dated? You'll get a drastically deflated number.
Oh, 5.
When it's really 5,000. So look out.
I am the Narcopath. Remember me? What's the matter?
Hi, good evening. This is Sandy Hoaxtard with TV5 Real News. I've just got a brief update for y'all. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the other stations, but once again, there's a California fire. We need to take a close examination of these California wildfires, they call them. We've discussed it before. These ain't no naturally occurring things. But it makes me sick to see my rivals on the news sitting there talking about it, reporting on it, as if it just magically just came out of nowhere and, oh, firefighters are trying to solve the problem, and firefighters come on and move their hands around and they say, oh, it's just so fast, it just appeared out of nowhere, it just goes left and right and up and down, we don't know what to do. And I think, honey, it's directed energy weapons, goddammit. The military's already announced long before all these fires in California that they were working with lasers, and guess what? They're invisible. And guess what? They just immediately, on impact, wrap up things into dust like the World Trade Center. And you listen to the newscasts where they have the witnesses saying, well, it just came out of nowhere. We couldn't prepare for it. Well, honey, I wonder why. Because it's a directed energy weapon. Now we need to find out who it is targeting California. Because clearly a war is going on, and the stupid, retarded newscasters aren't going to tell you about it. They're just going to act like the stupid people they are and say, oh, this fire came. Oh, it started by someone's match. It deliberately burned 10 houses in a row. Oh, but it left the trees, and it left their plastic gazebo, but everything else was turned to ashes. As if that's normal. Now, come on. And there were cars that were melted, glass gone, tires melted, metal gone. Honey, that ain't natural. Normal fires just don't get that hot. But microwave fires do. They get really hot. Hotter than any naturally occurring fire. And that explains all those toasted cars at the World Trade Center that weren't even near the building. That explains all these goddamn California fires because some Agenda 21 fuckface wants to get everybody out of there so they can have the oil under the land and so China can buy it or whatever the fuck they want. I'm sick of it. I think we need to fight back and get rid of these goddamn directed energy weapons. They just destroy houses, and of course they won't let you rebuild your house unless you redo the whole foundation, which is retarded, and another deterrent, so they can have it for their goddamn Agenda 21. Well, honey, I ain't buying that. If you're in California, you shouldn't either. I'm Sandy Hoaxtard. I hope this news event was enlightening for you. I'll see you later on TV5 Real News. Is the camera off?
Yeah, baby, you're
These
fine.
people are ridiculous. They think the fires are naturally... I've read some of the social media. They think it's normal. They think it's natural. What is wrong with these fools? Fires like that ain't natural. What's wrong with these fools? I'm glad I moved from California to New York. That is disgusting. People don't have any hope if they're going to stay there, and there's nobody to blame because it's hidden in the clouds. I saw one. I saw a video of one. It was a ship that was up in the sky, and this one actually had a colored laser, and you could see it. I mean, you could see the big dark cloud and this zip down, and then fire everywhere, as if that's naturally occurring. I don't think so, but maybe it's not my job to teach these people. They've got to find it on their own, but I think it is disgusting. It's murder! It is disgusting murder! We need to set up a cannon and just shoot down any of those goddamn ships that are doing this because it's killing people. Some people have no regard for human life. Those people need to lose their life. The camera's off, isn't it?
Yeah, baby, you're fine.
Ha! I didn't say that. God, why would you do that? Oh,